welcome back to Light Up Your Worth, and this is Debbie. I'm excited for you to meet this week's guest, Po Hong Yu, in our episode, The Art of Surrender and Self-Compassion. We're going to offer profound insights into the continuous cycle of self-expression and the interconnectedness of emotions, emphasizing true healing as a lifelong journey. So my friend Po Hong Yu is a multifaceted healer, and our conversation really focuses on her journey through trauma, healing, and embodiment, and her surrender to life's divine flow. And she has some really good deep introspection and somatic healing that she discusses, with the importance of self-love, shadow work, and the impact of ancestral healing and the power of receiving love and support for others. I can't wait to hear back how you love Po Hong just as much as I do. Stay tuned as we jump into this. Thank you for being here on Light Up Your Worth. This would not be possible without all of you, sending you so much love and sunshine. This is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I have a special treat for you. I am so excited to have my guest, Po Hong Wu. She is a spiritual guide. It was going to be a fun episode.
Happens all the
She is a spiritual guide, somatic healer, plant medicine facilitator, self-intimacy teacher, and she's the host of this really amazing podcast of Tao of Po. She guides people in their process of healing, embodiment, expansion, and full expression. Her teachings are based on Taoism, energetics, and the practice of surrendering to the divine flow of life with consciousness and receptivity. Her experience as an acupuncturist brings a holistic approach to her work, where she integrates the physical, emotional, mental, and energetic realms. And now you know why she's going to be on Light Up Your Worth. Welcome, Po.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. So the audience knows I was practicing to get her name right, and I told her, "You help me because it's one of my challenges in this life."
We all have something. Or multiple.
I've learned not to shame myself or say, "What are you doing? You can't get people's names right." I grew up where it was disrespectful if you couldn't say somebody's name correctly. I've had to look at that belief and go, "I'm doing the best I can."
100% kindness and self-compassion trumps all.
That whole self-compassion to ourself and all the experiences that we've been through. I am so curious. You have such a fascinating background. I was drawn to your energy and your vibes. I'm sure the listeners can feel it through our conversation. Like, your vibration is just so amazing, pure. And your connection is pure. That takes more deep healing and clearing, not just yourself, but your ancestors. It's super powerful. I would love to hear how you came to be who you are now, doing all of this beautiful healing and shining your light.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that reflection. My experience of life is messy and beautiful in the mess. And I like to talk about that a lot because my life has been an intense deep dive into the shadow because of life circumstances, of multiple traumas when I was younger. And that really propelled me into an initiation of a sort, initiation into really connecting with who I really am. It took decades for me to be willing to look at myself in these ways because of my own healing path and being with what is. I overflow that with the people I work with. I've always known since I was young that I would support people. I just didn't know how, and life unfolded in the most magical and perfect ways, even in the crunchiest and messiest and darkest times. I'm grateful for all of it because it's given me the opportunity to learn and grow and expand. I feel very grateful for the work that I've been called to do here in this lifetime.
Mm. Life has given you opportunities and given you this chance to really choose what path you were going to go down and then stay on or learn from it. I would love to hear about what you feel comfortable sharing along that path. People hear about shadow work, but may not understand what's involved. What did the shadow work look like for you?
Yes, it looked different at different times in my life.
Mm,
When I talk about shadow work, I consider myself a light worker because to do shadow work, you need to be connected to the light. The light illuminates the path. And for a long time, there was very little connection to the light because I was so depressed and full of shame and self hatred. It looked different at different phases, but overall, it's a willingness to be with what is and to be willing to be honest with yourself about your patterns, your beliefs, your judgments, feelings, deep self accountability of what is living inside of you. There's so much that's happening in our subconscious, and that's really what the shadow is, the
mhm,
subconscious. Are we willing to illuminate that path for ourselves and let that path unfold? That's part of this work of surrendering, like allowing it to unfold, because once we allow it to be, then it does open up step by step and you start to see other possibilities. It took decades of continuing to show up and meet myself wherever I was. My capacity was very small when I began the work, but now because of the commitment and devotion to my freedom, I continue to show up as much as I could and having compassion for myself in the moments that I couldn't, right?
mm,
Shadow work is really about, and when I talk about the illumination of the light on the path, the light is love. My
mm.
process has been a deep commitment to love, loving myself, loving others, choosing to receive abundance in my life. Not talking about money, this love energy. I was so shut down because of all the traumas that I did not let love in. I did not let love out. I would withhold love. There's all these tactics and defense mechanisms that I had that really prevented me from being with it, being more willing to let that flow of giving and receiving happen was profound for me.
That was beautifully expressed. There's so much to unpack. I love how you've talked about the cycles and that it's taken decades and what it looked like when you started that self-compassion, the capacity, the compassion, the love, or not quite that much love yet, and how it has continued and evolved into who you are and how you show up. And even when you have current experiences that we still go through this process, we're just like myself, I'm more familiar with the cycles. If I feel something triggered, I sit with it. I've realized those cycles are so much faster now because I'm not stuffing it down or numbing or so I love how you talk about always coming back, that the light is always the love.
My dad was really my first spiritual teacher who taught me all of the foundations of what I teach and guide people through. He would always remind me of this light and love in different ways and really just giving me permission to be wherever I was, no matter how good or bad it was. Like he never had created a hierarchy of good or bad. It was just like, just really taking in the experience and letting it work me or move through me. It does, like you said earlier, take a courage to decide to love yourself a little bit more. You don't think about love as being courageous, but it really is. That's been my commitment to myself is to continue showing up in that bravery.
continue showing up in the bravery. I'd like to give listeners permission to show up for themselves. If they're hearing you talk about how you started down the journey of taking those first steps. So what if they've done some work, they started to look at their cycles, have along that journey, have you found that sometimes you're like, "Okay, enough. Am I good yet?"
Yeah, I
Have you
mean,
felt that way? I know I have, right? 20 years I've been working, and then a couple years ago with this big spiritual awakening, I was like, "You're kicking my butt again. What is happening? I thought I had done the work. If this is what you need to do to me, okay. I'm here as a vessel to help bring more light." How was that for you?
I totally get that feeling. Yeah, and I think I've learned now to just not have any expectations and that it's not about the arrival, it's
Mhm.
about really the journey. And so anytime I do get to another level of expansion, I realize it is that cycle, so I just begin again. I stay a beginner, I stay open to learning, and my dad would always talk about the life process and spiritual process and healing and expansion process, um, as if it were a spiral, right? So that's why I have tattooed here this spiral
Oh.
inspired by my dad and our conversations about the energetics of life and the flow of life and how the more we practice and go deeper, we also are going higher and we're just going in and in. And so it doesn't ever stop. That spiral is infinite, right? But
Mhm.
we receive bounty in the process. A big part of my practice is acknowledging and appreciating every moment where I'm doing something different, being brave, where I'm maybe choosing a different thought, or I surrendered to feeling something that perhaps I didn't want to feel. All these moments are epic in my book. And I think a lot of times people really want to just celebrate the big, quote unquote, obvious celebrations, but there's like these minute, nuanced moments all the time throughout the day where we have chosen to be brave in some form. And if we can take that in and receive our power in that moment, it escalates, speeds up the process of healing and an expansion. Because we're seeing
Mhm.
ourselves for who we are.
Oh, I love how you've articulated that. It's the spiral, always a reminder of being present, allowing. It's not, "Oh, I went and took this retreat. I just went and took this class. Oh, I'm good now. I've released the dark stuff, the shame and the guilt. It's trying to come with us." If we allow it, if we aren't practicing self-compassion, self-love, awareness, presence, your dad sounds like a brilliant, wise spiritual man.
Goodness, he is everything. He taught me what real love, acceptance, surrender, and
Mhm.
flow is. As you were talking, I had this thought of my teacher, the true teachers have been like all these suffering moments, like the moments that I did not feel the love. It woke me up. I allowed it to be an experience that shook things up in me so I can see what it is that I don't want and feeling that in my body. Oh God, a lot of these times I was creating my own suffering. I didn't know another way and would spin in my mind, ruminate, have anxiety or be in fear. It was really a gift because the more I was suffering, the more I hit a wall of, oh no, I need to turn this around. I'm no longer willing to feel like this all the time. My dad was an amazing guide. Every time I would have moments of suffering, which was a lot, constant, my whole life. I was in darkness, suffering for decades, and he would always bring me back to acceptance of what was, whether without a bypassing way, more of just like
Mhm.
really dropping in to the moment of, okay, I'm judging myself right now. Just giving myself permission to accept myself in that moment. Self acceptance is beautiful. Can I really accept this moment? Can I accept myself? Can I accept that I acted out and was reactive? Really
Mhm.
forgive myself in that moment? All kinds of self-forgiveness work, because
Mm.
when we're not conscious and living from our subconscious, we're spewing out and spilling out our energy onto other people with projections, etc. And I had to do a lot of forgiveness work because I would constantly shame myself or feel guilty about my reactivity and how my trauma was showing up in my life. And when I started being nicer to myself in those moments, it really moved the.
Wow. The reactivity. We all have done this. Reacting before you know, there's no thought process, right? It's like it just comes spewing out or what you go off and the action you can take. We've all done this
Yep.
more times than we care to remember. We can still do it. I could do it tomorrow. I hear more frequently these days this term bypassing, like, well, you should always be happy. And I'm not happy every moment of every day. Are you? Because
No, no.
I've stopped suppressing so much still in my 5th decade because we're alive and living this experience and just fully living it. When these experiences come up or we set expectations and then it doesn't go as planned, it's a fertile ground for emotions, the triggers, or even bypassing what you're actually feeling. I've had to acknowledge that I have the shadows, the dark, as well as a lot of light. I can't suppress it. I allow it to come up so I can heal it and learn from it.
Yeah, I
Um,
love this conversation so much because it's so much of the work that I do. And my foundation of my teachings is based on Taoism. Hence my podcast name, Tao of Po. My dad, a Taoist spiritual teacher, was a Jesuit priest before he met my mother and he left the priesthood. But this idea and philosophy really of Taoism and it's yin and yang, feminine and masculine energy. And yin, there's many words and descriptions that I can say for both energies, but just for simplicity right now, yin would be considered the like darkness, and then yang would be considered the light. And it's really not about putting one or the other on a pedestal or better than. They work together when we allow ourselves to be in the energy that's arising. It creates more flow because we're not resisting. Yeah, the feminine energy is powerful. A lot of times we judge that, like surrender, receptivity, or openness
mhm,
or softness. It's no, that's power. And also in the darkness, I found for myself and with my students and clients and patients, the darkness is where we cultivate our power. There's so much we receive from there, like the soil. It's
mhm,
dark in there. You talked about the fertile, I think you said something about
mhm,
soil.
mhm.
It's like there's so much nutrients. Are we willing to receive it? Darkness.
There's so much that happens like a garden. You have to water it and give it some sunlight so it can stay in there and support it. And I, I don't know about how you feel about this, but I believe because I wouldn't say I'm always comfortable in the dark, but when I've hit it,
Mhm.
I find myself repeating a pattern. Oh, this is what I used to say to myself. This is not what I say to myself anymore. As I've up leveled, continually expanded into who I am with more love, acceptance, releasing, the millions of things over my lifetime that cause shame. As I've released them, I feel like I show up different. I'm able to hold you if you are having it without gonna like, I'm not gonna go fix you though. Like, I don't did you grow up with that mentality of people wanna fix you? I've always cried. Been a big releaser of that. People used to feel like they had to help me stop crying.
Oh, yes. People are so uncomfortable with emotions that they do that to protect themselves.
People start handing you tissues and I'm like, "I'm not done."
I love that. Such a great example because that is a perfect way where people can block you or be a subtle message of stop crying. This is making me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I never knew this until I started down this path in my 30s. I'd gone to a coaching institute, and they're really connected spiritually as well, their training program. I remember being in these cohorts that would go for and spend 3 full days with these people. Within the first half an hour of every or half day of these 3-day sessions for as you go through their training program, everybody's like, how do you get so connected with your emotions?" And I was like, I've been born this way. And it was through that I started to accept it's a superpower of mine. I didn't realize everybody doesn't feel these levels of emotion. What's your superpower, Poe, that you've realized through this journey?
I can relate to that. I was always very emotional, sensitive, empathic. That's why I chose to numb because I didn't want to feel so much. And I
Mhm,
judged myself for being sensitive. I believe my sensitivity is my superpower. The thing, and I talk about this a lot, the thing that we shamed ourselves for
mhm,
usually is connected to our superpower. Once we alchemize that shame, my sensitivity in terms of energetics, inner child, divine, nature, animals has been powerful for me. Acceptance of that was major and it allowed me to step into the fullness of my work. This has been over
mhm.
time.
Yeah.
Not
Oh, yeah, I've
right.
been working on this for 2 or 3 years. I'm so proud of you. I witnessed that. Everybody who's on that journey. It continues to unfold in our lives. Make all of the plans, but you gotta release and surrender to it. I am fascinated when you were talking about surrendering. I wanna hear how that has looked, and has it changed on this journey? Like, what surrender looks like today versus it did even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I have 5 placements in Scorpio in my astrology chart. I'm constantly in this evolutionary
Mhm,
process of death and rebirth. Surrender looks different today than 5 years ago or even a year ago. The thing that has shifted the most is because of the somatic healing work I've done with myself, which is a lot of the work I guide people through because the trauma and pain lives in our bodies, in our nervous system, in our cellular makeup, in our energetic systems. It's not enough just to do the mind work. We need to alchemize what's living in our bodies and create space within ourselves. Surrender has become easier for me over the years because I have created this space in my body, created a
mm,
larger capacity to be with high sensations, to be with discomfort, to be with emotions and things like that. I discovered over time that I can feel hard feelings and beautiful feelings like grief and joy or grief and
mm.
gratitude. The more we surrender and expand our capacity, the more we can feel opposing things at the same time.
Tell me more about that. What does that feel like? Is that where if you've had a loss, you can also remember the moment of the love and connectivity?
I have a great example of this. One in particular is with my dog Siba, who passed a few years ago. She was 17. After we put her to sleep, I was in my head about the process, feeling guilty
Mhm,
about certain things. Like, it's very common for pet owners to be like, "Oh, did I wait too long or did I put them to
mm,
sleep too early?" I'm an animal empath and animals are very dear to me. I went through this process of noticing how I was attaching myself to judging myself or making myself feel guilty over whatever decision, right? And I was
mhm.
like, oh, this is really interesting that I'm doing this right now. I went into a deeper inquiry and felt into what's happening. I'm doing this because I'm trying to avoid feeling the connection. This was my way of blocking my connection with Siba's spirit. Once I realized that, I was like, "Oh, no, I
Mm,
wanna be connected to her. I don't wanna spin in this mental guilt to avoid her." And so, in that moment, I dropped into allowing myself to connect with her energy, and then grief came through and love. Grief and love are so intimately connected. I talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
And that's a great example of how
Mhm.
we can just feel those 2 things at
Mm.
once, and actually they need each other.
Yeah, so important. Sorry. I just felt into that emotion and had such a similar experience pretty recently. A little, maybe it's been a year and a half now that I lost my 10-year-old Pitty Blue. Eh,
Mm.
he was special, being so empathic with him, and he had been sick, and I went on a vacation and I came back and he had lost a lot of weight. I knew before I left that there was something not right. He was waiting for me to be okay. I had a session with an animal empath because I didn't trust my own intuitiveness of what I was picking up. And I felt that guilt that you're talking about. And what I came to realize when I did drop in and trust my own wisdom was that he was waiting for me to be okay because he had joined my life to help me feel safety
I get that. That was my experience too.
and love at a level I hadn't experienced. And
The animals are
mhm,
like
mhm,
angels on earth.
yeah,
They guide and teach us in ways we need. We are soul connected, soulmates. I love that you had that experience too and get it.
yeah, yeah. And I had an experience with my first one of my dogs when I was earlier. When I lived in Colorado, lived outside of Boulder, Colorado, and my dog got sick, Miss Shiloh, and she was 8. I was working with my first Reiki master at the time, and she was experimenting and doing a lot of other stuff. The day I had to put her down because she had cancer, we had a session right after. The vet had come to my home. We did this beautiful ceremony. The dog, my vet there was very empathic. When that was over, I went on and got on this phone sessions before Zoom and Teams. And she walked me through this process of watching my Shiloh appear as an angel. I saw her true self. And it stayed with me. I was still pretty new on my journey, a couple years in. Back 20 years ago, it was much more challenging to find information and connect with people. Unlike now, it's much easier to connect with souls of like ourselves. I actually saw her transform into this beautiful angel, and it always stayed with me. When the time came, it took me years to have another dog because I was heartbroken. My son's dad, my 20-year relationship, he flew out to Colorado from California and just spent 10 days or a week or something with me because he knew how much my connection was with the dog. When I went through this experience, the guilt that started to happen with my dog Blue was that I just allowed it to happen and grieved because he had a sister who I still have. And I think she's still grieving a year and a half later. There's moments where it's much more obvious. Pro was that as I started to feel a little better, he actually was sending me healing downloads of, I want to say, almost like a modality of these energetic pockets of what these lessons of what the dogs, uh, primarily dogs, were teaching people. Of course, probably could apply to cat lovers or horses, but they have their own energy, I believe, as well. And that he had all these lessons, and so I was sharing them with my spiritual healer, and I said, "Oh, this would be beautiful," and she's, "No, that's yours. Like, those are that's a gift that he gave you." And I wrote it down and I saved it. I never really did anything with it, but it was so powerful for those of us connected with the essence of why they're here. I went off on a tangent, sorry, but it was
I love
so
this conversation. Not many people talk about this, honestly.
yeah, the connection with I don't think that a dog is a dog. I think if we're open to receiving who they truly are, they show themselves to us.
The gifts my animals, cats and dogs, have given me are priceless. It makes me emotional because they are so generous. They know how to love
Mhm.
unconditionally. They are masterful guides and teachers. My animals have taught me so much. And talking about the passing away timing, I said to Siba, when you're ready, let me know. Because I have had many pets over the years since I was a child and realized over time that I was feeling guilty a lot. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to tell her, you tell me, and I'll just stay open to listening to when you're ready. And I honestly think that being attached to guilt, shame, regret, or any low vibration mental attachments are distractions from true connection. In that moment, I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, wow, I'm doing this right now, and I don't wanna do this. I wanna be connected to her, so why would I do this?" So it was a powerful experience for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm all boohooing over here, but that's my superpower. And thank you for honoring me to just let that come up and out. That was just an amazing healing that you just provided me, not even probably consciously. I want to highlight for that for the listeners that our exchange and talking through things just healed and released more guilt that I didn't even realize was still hanging on. By you standing in your light, you gave me permission to feel what I was feeling. Healing can be that simple and complex at the same time.
Yes, so true. It doesn't re always require this big it's in these little moments we can see how, "Oh my gosh, this was such a profound moment." I think those little nuanced moments are more profound in a lot of ways because when we tap into the subtleties, we're
Mhm.
really feeling undercurrents, the parts not as obvious and on the surface.
Your somatic movement, what does that look like? In what form does that come through you and the people you work with?
I do different types of modalities for
Mhm.
somatic healing. I always say to people, trust where your energy is pulling you in terms of what kind of modality. I facilitate deep dives with plant medicine, a somatic guide and teacher, as well as inner child alchemy sessions where I guide people into the sensations that live in people's bodies
Mhm.
because from my personal experience and what I've seen in the people I work with is that these sensations are guides into trauma, memories, pain bodies, or experiences we've had throughout our life. A lot of times, what happens is people are afraid to feel the sensations because they're afraid to go to where it's guiding them. That's obviously not a conscious thought they have,
Mm.
but there's a knowing inside that it could be uncomfortable because it's unknown. There's mystery and magic in the body. I guide people through deepening presence and connection with sensations and emotions. Eventually, they connect with their inner child, which is such deeply profound work because then they get to become more whole and remember who they are and
Mhm.
release the things that are perhaps blocking them from whatever it is in their life.
Mhm. So does your work visually I've done work with DNA work, I've done work where I do a lot of work in the subconscious in my modality with coaching. So it's a blending of what time does it seem appropriate to bring them down into the quantum, into their Akash records, and start really releasing some of those different blocks. There's so much stored in our body. We're working a lot in our emotional body, and it gets stuck to be able to get to our etheric bodies and the other couple layers that we have. Does your practices then help bring it out past almost break through the emotional body into other layers? If the etheric body is what's coming to mind. Does it push through all of that with the blending of the modalities you're using? the plant medicine with the energy, the movement.
Yes, it's similar to the idea that when we do inner child work, we are healing ourselves in the present moment. There's no timeline. It's making these parts of us whole. When we're doing this alchemy work within ourselves, it is going to have a natural domino effect, if you will, because it's all connected. All realms, all fields are connected. When you do work in one realm, it's always gonna impact the other because of that connection. So, yes, it does do that.
Oh, I love that. I
Because
had never
energy is energy, right?
right?
Because we're working on the energetic realm
Mhm.
too when we're working on what's happening in the body, so
Yeah.
it's going to connect somehow.
Okay. I had never really thought about that, right? Because that's why I'm like, oh, how it gets stuck in our body. I completely subscribe to that belief. And I think there's so many different sciences now that are proving that these emotions, our traumas, our ancestral traumas, are are passed on to us just like our hair color, skin color, and our mannerisms, e- epigenetics, and some of the other work like Dr. Bruce Lipton and have spent decades now actually proving with science of what we're talking about. I love that you give a vehicle, a method, a way to be able to release this because I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. After so many years of spending time in the leadership realm and learning all this personal development and the healing modalities, there's this big push about what's my purpose? I've come to realize at a deeper level with the podcast over the last 2 years that our purpose is simply to heal.
Yeah, that's 100% part of it. It's that cycle again, death and rebirth, right? This evolution through healing work. It doesn't end there, it expands. We're not just trying to get out of survival mode or just heal the pain. We're also expanding to the next level of what's possible for us and how much pleasure can we feel, how much joy and gratitude can we connect to and appreciations? It's the yin and the yang. I'm always thinking about it that way because I see how pain and pleasure are connected. When I talk about
Mhm.
somatic practices, it's not just the healing of the trauma, it's can I actually be kind to myself and my body by feeling more pleasure, giving myself permission to receive goodness. A lot of times people are afraid to have abundance in their life or actually
Mhm.
feel good, right? There's a
Mhm.
attachment to not feeling good because it's a part of our story. That was the case for me, for sure. Like I was like swampy a lot of times because I was just like wanting to spin in the comfort of the suffering.
Mm.
Once we realize through the healing work that there's more that's possible for us, then it really takes off on a whole nother level.
Oh, highly agree. I've been working on so much trauma all these years that just I would say maybe 4 weeks ago, I had this moment so lit up from a coaching session I facilitated. I witnessed them make this moment of their own acceptance of something, and they released this huge thing that's been on that they've been carrying for multiple decades. I was just so filled with gratitude that I had witnessed this beautiful soul that was learning how to accept herself, love herself. I remember feeling so lit. Later that night, I was there and I think I had gone into my evening meditation, which is a Dr. Joe, who I just adore him. I like guided meditations because my mind most of the time wants to go jump track. I like guided meditations are my favorite. I'm doing evening visioning and releasing what I need to do. I had this moment of where I know I had already expanded into a different neural pathway a couple months ago, but I would drop and then I go back up. In this meditation, I felt this feeling I had never experienced. It was like I felt like I was staying now up in this consciousness of not just now that I've worked through so much of this trauma that I was now into that past thriving, this deep surrender of allowing. Right before that, those days leading up to it, my head was spinning. I have a whole thing full of stickies, categorized, trying to figure out what to do with all these things. I need a new opt-in. It must not be resonating with people. Oh, I need to prepare this podcast or intro full of to-dos. When I came out of that, I looked at it and I said, that's so beautiful. I'm just going to show up. This will get done. I want that feeling of staying with how I was so lit up with what I witnessed. And there was this huge shift, and I've been in that energy now. I'd have to ask my coach. I continually have my own coach to help me reflect back what I cannot see for myself. And she was like, "Honey, you just went through this whole other expansion." I was trying to explain the feeling, but she knows what I'm talking about. This lightness, deep surrender.
Yes.
And what what does that bring up with you? Like that surrender process for yourself as you have gone through? Was it a I feel physically different. Like I changed my clothes. That's the old outfit. Now you're wearing a new snazzy, shiny outfit. Look at that bling you're wearing, right?
I love it.
She's witnessed it. How does that feel for you mentally or physically? How does that show up for you, Poe?
I see different ways, like my eyes look clearer, more presence, a glow emanating and radiating from my body in a new way. There's not all these walls trying to protect the energy moving in or out through me. There's a generosity when I surrender more. I have this fullness, so then I can overflow, so I can serve even more, and also creative energy, like these downloads and inspiration, or just really being tapped into how energy moves through life. In my body, it feels lighter, not as
Mhm.
dense. And like you said, like there's moments where it's like significant, like you just feel completely different. And then other times it's like these smaller moments that are cumulative but again, talking about what we were saying earlier about really appreciating those moments
Mhm.
has been massive. I think for you, that part of it, like anybody who can really embody that next level of expansion and feel it, it's because they actually allowed themselves to receive the beauty and power of that moment. Instead of saying, a lot of times people will expand and they'll judge it or not acknowledge it, or all these things that dim the shine of that experience. The more that we can actually be gracious receivers of our own expansion, it has such a massive impact in our evolution. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel honored because it feels personal, like how we are experiencing our own surrenders and moving through this journey. Is there anything we could add to surrender that we haven't touched on that you'd the listeners to be aware of or
Yeah.
recognize within themselves?
In my surrender episode 46, I think it's important to say that when we talk about surrender, it doesn't have to be this big dramatic experience, because the word in itself can be scary for people or
You
feel
know,
the intent. It could just be a moment of relaxing your body. It's really, for me, about the softening. And softening can happen just 1 degree at a time. And so it doesn't have to be this like dramatic experience. It's a moment to moment checking in and tapping into where you could relax or feel a little bit more. That's what I want to bring, because the word surrenders. Oh my God, I don't know how to surrender. How do I even do that?
I've been hearing that word for years. Just surrender. I trust the process. Allow, receive, surrender. Those are my words this year, my mantra. Allow. I've brought in so much goodness. It's gone in waves, learning, growing, receiving. Now it's this big receiving, heart expansion. Take another breath and expand a little bit more.
Yes. Yes, that moment to moment unfolding is powerful. When I talk about surrendering, it's also surrendering to life. I love the book, The Surrender Experience by
Mhm.
Michael Singer. It shows what happens when we surrender to the natural flow of life and what can be created when we surrender and go to places that we never would expect. That's been my life. People might think I'm impulsive or wild or no, that may be I am wild, but more than anything, I'm surrendered to where life is taking me. I
Mhm.
notice where it's guiding me. I'm not fighting it. Because of that, I've had an adventurous life experience that has taken me to really powerful healing moments and powerful expansive moments too.
Mm. I love that. Wild and impulsive. I've been called those before.
Just being tapped in, like, maybe it
Mhm.
can be impulsive, but, like, there's also this beautiful part of it is, "Oh, I'm just following my intuition." In a world where we're not taught to tap into our intuition, we're told to follow the to-do list or the grinding, the hustling. What would happen if you open up to your intuitive hits, these moments where something comes to you, can you trust that and follow through? There's so much magic when we do.
Oh my gosh, if I had said no to some of this stuff or not followed it, the impulsiveness, it goes along the lines of trusting my messages are valid and maybe something will turn out but it's not I come to expect that it's not going to turn out the way I think it is. It's actually going to be something that I can't even imagine and so much better. My travels exposed me to things I would have never in my life thought I would have experienced, and I'm just so grateful for that, these experiences, and I know you had a recent one too with one of your travel that you talk about in your episode 46, which is every listener needs to go find this episode 46. It was like it's just so full of packed of wisdom and epiphanies of your own journey, but how it can apply to all of us. How you chose to show up for yourself in the moments of what was happening on a vacation, the quotations, this vacation, where we all have expectations of a vacation in a desired location. I don't know if you want to touch on that of what that looked like in real life with your experience with it's just so powerful with surrender.
Yeah, I just like a brief summary. I got food poisoning. I got my period during the food poisoning. I fell on the first day and got bloody leg, tossed in the ocean like a rag doll. It was like literally the energy of Nicaragua created this really intense experience for me that I was not expecting. And it was so perfect, even though it was very uncomfortable and painful physically. It gave me amazing opportunity to receive care and love from the people I was on vacation with, and I just deepened into the presence of the moment, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm, like, floating around like a Buddha saying even in my biggest pain, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the best." I'm not saying it like that, more just having this deep connection to the bigger picture and how life is this wild, mysterious experience. These moments give us an opportunity to grow, heal, or shift. I really love any opportunity where I can receive because, especially on this level where it's physical, where I couldn't take care of myself,
Mhm.
because helped me expand my heart in a whole new way. I really feel not only from my own experience, but holding other people in their process that like really letting that love in, really letting that love in can be so scary and challenging. When I was younger, I would block any kind of compliments. If somebody literally told me that I was attractive or something nice about me, I would tell them, I would say, shut up, like literally in my 20s. I would tell them to shut up. My trauma was, no, I can't receive that because I don't believe I'm worthy of it. I didn't feel worthy of any love. This constant practice of letting it in a little bit more. I'm now at a place in my life where I can let it in to my body, and it feels amazing. A lot of times when I share, I like to remind people what's possible because I think people forget when they're caught up in their life or the minutia of it. They forget that there's so many other possibilities. I've made it to the other side. That doesn't mean I don't have struggles, fear, or resistances. It just means I have a willingness to surrender. I let myself be wherever I am.
That's going to be a quote because the willingness to surrender,
Mm.
like we get to choose.
We really
It,
do. It is a choice. It is a choice. I learned that from my dad's holding, bringing him back into this moment. It's every single time I was in pain and suffering. Like I said, he always would remind me to embrace that moment, to that it's okay. It will move. It will be okay. Like he has a deep trust in life, the divine, and my process. He never tried to fix me. He never tried to rescue me. He would just remind me of what's true. That gave me more permission and guidance in suffering. What am I going to do? Embrace this moment and relax or keep resisting it. Every time I surrendered and embraced the moment, something let go. It was another awakening, another expansion. That's why I trust it now because
wow.
I have all of these embodied experiences that I've throughout the years that I know that it will be fine and more amazing than I imagined. In the beginning, it was terrifying. I struggled a lot with the resistance, and it's just a practice. We keep coming back to the practice.
Yeah. This has been so full of mystic moments and magic, allowing everything to unfold between our conversations. Thank you. I know everybody's going to love listening to what unfolded. I want to start wrapping us up with these two questions. One of them is that it's about I love music. I believe in the power of music, the vibration, the instruments, the just the magic within it. So when you're having these moments of self-doubt or less self-compassion, acceptance, what song or songs do you put on to help you process those moments, uplift you back to who you really are?
I have a twofold answer. There's not one particular song, but first I want to say that I agree. Music is such an amazing cathartic or such a vibration that can guide us in amazing ways. And sometimes I'll use like a song that has like more of an angry vibration and I use it to help move the anger and I'll move my body in a way that moves the anger. Or if I need to feel grief, I may put a song on that brings that emotion up in me even more and I'll move my body to match and with that feeling. I'm actually doing an embodied practice in that way. Same with joy. And I choose accordingly, but one of the songs that I have been listening to in moments that I'm like in this zone and I just want
Mhm.
to lift it higher and higher is I Feel Love by Sam Smith. The energy is potent and it always moves me. I
Mm.
hope you'll enjoy it.
Yes, I'm gonna look it up. I'm putting them on a YouTube playlist so that we can all feel that. I had never really thought about what you said with the anger stuff. Even though my music has changed, there's a song I used to play that's angry. It was popular in the 90s or early 2000s. And I remember traveling with my mom, and I would play this album over and over. It's Alanis Morissette's song, "You Should Know" or something.
I know a
And
song that you're talking
and it
about.
was
Yep.
so angry, right? I was in a breakup, playing it and screaming it around my place. Oh, maybe I should put that song on and see what comes up all these years later. How I love that. A wonderful tip for people.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I encourage people to move that energy through their voice, like screaming in a pillow or in their car, maybe punching the couch, giving yourself permission to embody this feeling so they can truly move through is really a game changer.
Yeah, super powerful. What would you tell your younger self about this journey with self-acceptance and shining your own light and worth?
Mm. The first thing that comes up for me, because when I was young, I felt so alone and unworthy. I would tell her, "You are perfect, worthy, loved, you are not alone." And I would reaffirm her over and over and tell her, "This path has been carved for you. This is not accidental." I would remind her of who she is and where she's going, that you're going to be such a light in the world and you have this courage and strength to lean into it. But most of all is this piece around you're not alone. Because I think
Mhm,
a lot of times what happens with trauma is that the people who heal faster have community or loved ones that can hold them
mhm,
after the trauma. I didn't have that. I was very isolated. Encourage her to connect with people, express her feelings, and tell people that she needs help. Ask for it. Open up to people. Let them in that way.
mhm. That's so beautiful. Really speaking to why we do better in community and why we keep searching for our peeps to help us through whatever stage we're in, phase or healing or experiences or likes and fun and activities. And you like to go bungee jumping. I don't even know if people do that anymore, right? But that they go find people who want to do that or, who with whatever it is in life. Community is just so we're not meant to be alone. We were not created to be solitary.
Yes.
So love that reminder. How can the listeners reach you, Poe?
My website is taoofpo.com. That's TAOFPO. That's also the name of my podcast. I highly recommend you all check out my solo episodes and interviews. They're heart transmissions and medicine journeys because I transmit energy through my voice into your somatic, energetic body. You'll learn more about me through my podcast, also on Instagram and Facebook under my name. I'm not going to spell it out because it's like it becomes a whole thing, but I'm sure that you're going to leave links for them so they can connect with me. I would love for you to DM me. I'm very active in my stories, so reach out and share how this conversation has potentially impacted you or insights that you've received. I would love to hear.
I will link all of that. We'll link episode 46 and the surrender experience by Michael Singer. Everything will be in the show notes. And I hope they reach out and listen. Your podcast is so real and funny, insightful, and full of wisdom. You can feel that energy transmitted through. Thank you so much for joining me. I feel honored to have been able to share and shine your light. Thank you, Poe.
Thank you, Debbie. This has been a beautiful conversation. So appreciative.